You know the moment I'm talking about. That quiet hour when the world has finally gone still, and you're left alone in a dim room with nothing but the hum of your own breath. Your phone rests beside you like a lifeboat. Its glow promises escape, and a doorway out of the heaviness settling in your chest. And for a second, your hand moves toward it, not out of interest, but out of fear. Fear of what might rise if you don't reach for distraction. Pause there, because this is where the real story begins. Most people think they're searching for love, but what they're truly searching for is relief from the discomfort of meeting themselves. We scroll, we call, we drift into conversations we don't care about, all to avoid the echo of our own thoughts. Yet in these small, unguarded moments, when the night grows soft and there's nowhere left to run, you feel something stirring beneath the noise. A faint ache, a clear truth, a presence you've ignored for years. And you see, it's a strange paradox. We chase connection to escape the loneliness we carry. Yet the loneliness comes from abandoning the one relationship. We've never learned to nurture the one with ourselves. You feel it every time the room grows silent, every time the night slows down, every time the mask slips and the person beneath it whispers for your attention. And so you reach for anything that will drown that whisper out. Listen to the room right now. Not the objects, not the shadows, the space, the stillness, the gentle pressure of being alone with yourself. Notice how quickly the mind wants to run. Notice the agitation rising like static under the skin. This is the part of the evening that feels like a mirror. And most people turn away long before they ever look into it. But stay here a little longer, because there's something in that silence you've been told to fear. Something tender, something ancient. If you listen closely, you'll hear not emptiness but a pulse. Soft, steady, familiar, like the night breathing with you, like your own presence, waiting patiently to be acknowledged. The mind wants to call this loneliness, but loneliness is just what we feel when we refuse to come home, and yet we keep running. We run into relationships the same way we run into noise, quickly, blindly, hoping the presence of another will muffle the unease inside. We think, if someone chooses me, maybe I won't have to face myself. But there is no partner on earth who can silence the truths you're unwilling to hear. Every escape you take from yourself will follow you into love, shaping it, distorting it, turning affection into dependency and closeness into camouflage. So here you are, in a quiet room, alone, but not abandoned, restless, but not lost. This moment is not a punishment. It is an invitation. The night is not closing in on you. It's opening. The silence you fear is not a void, but a doorway. And if you walk through it, if you sit with yourself without reaching for noise, without begging for distraction, you will feel something shift. A soft settling, a loosening inside the chest, the first glimpse of a truth your busy life never allowed you to see. Something deeper is waiting, just beneath this quiet, just beneath this breath. And this is where the real journey begins. There's a quiet fear most people carry, one they rarely speak aloud. It rises in the moments when the world goes still and there's nothing left to distract you from the noise inside your own chest. It's the fear of meeting your own mind without a buffer, without a screen glowing, without someone else's voice filling the space, without a task pulling you forward. When the mind has no escape, it begins to reveal what you've pushed aside. And for many, that is the dilemma at the center of their lives. They don't know how to be with themselves without trying to run. You feel it in small ways. The urge to check your phone for no reason. The sudden need to call someone, not out of affection, but out of discomfort. The restless pacing in your own home. as if you are searching for a door that leads anywhere but inward. These patterns seem harmless, but they tell the real story. They reveal how often you reach for others not because you're seeking connection, but because you're avoiding the silence that exposes you. You're not afraid of being alone. You're afraid of what solitude uncovers. And so you drift into relationships the same way you reach for noise. Quickly, blindly. Not because you're ready, but because you cannot stand the thought of sitting with yourself unguarded. You look for someone to soften the edges of your inner world, someone to drown out the whispers you've ignored for years. You think love will resolve this ache? You think another person will be the missing piece. But what you're truly looking for is relief. Notice how often you slip into roles to make that relief possible. You become the agreeable one, the dependable one, the easy one. You laugh at jokes that don't reach you. You say yes when everything inside you is begging you to say no. You bend, soften, hide parts of yourself just to keep the peace. And in the process, you lose the shape of who you are. These roles don't appear all at once. They form quietly, like dust, settling in the corners of a home you no longer notice. You adjust yourself bit by bit, believing this is what it means to love, believing this is what it takes to be wanted. But each adjustment, each compromise that silences your inner voice, becomes another layer between you and the truth you're avoiding. Somewhere beneath all those layers lives a presence you've forgotten. Have a version of yourself you've neglected for so long that they've become a stranger. The inner stranger. This stranger is the part of you who remembers what you truly want, what you fear, what you've buried, and what still hurts. They hold the memories you never processed, the dreams you postponed, the boundaries you swallowed, the truths you silenced. And every time you distract yourself, every time you run into someone else's arms without intention, every time you abandon your own needs to keep another person comfortable, you push this stranger deeper into the dark. But they never disappear. They wait silently, patiently, in the stillness you keep trying to avoid. It's easier to run into noise than it is to face the storm within you. It's easier to accept a mask than to confront the rawness beneath it. You tell yourself you're just being flexible, being loving, being cooperative, but what you're really being is absent from yourself. You're performing for approval, not living from truth. And the more you perform, the more distant you become from the one person you cannot escape. There is a moment in every relationship where this distance makes itself known. A subtle tension, a quiet confusion, a sense of emptiness even when someone is holding your hand. This is the heart's way of saying you're not here. Not fully, because how can you be present with someone else when you've never learned to be present with yourself? You begin depending on others to fill the spaces you've abandoned. You ask them to soothe fears you refuse to face, to validate dreams you never dared to claim, to carry wounds you never tended to. And without meaning to, you turn love into an escape route. You seek partners who distract you from the parts of yourself you're unwilling to meet. But no relationship, no matter how tender, can resolve the ache that comes from self-abandonment. The storm keeps growing. The body feels it first, tightness in the chest, a lingering restlessness, a quiet dread. When things become too still, the mind follows, racing thoughts, imagined futures, constant analysis of other people's feelings. The heart trembles under the weight of unspoken truths, and the more you avoid yourself, the louder the storm becomes. This is the dilemma. You want to feel whole. You want to feel loved. You want to feel understood. But you are searching for these things in places that cannot give them, not because people don't care, but because no one can meet the parts of you that you refuse to meet first. There's a moment, subtle but unmistakable, when the truth becomes too heavy to ignore, a moment when the distractions don't work the way they used to, when the noise no longer muffles the ache, when the roles feel tight and suffocating. You feel the distance between the life you're living and the self you've forgotten. You sense the presence of that inner stranger standing behind you, waiting to be acknowledged. And suddenly the room feels smaller. The silence feels sharper. The heart feels heavier. This is the friction point. The place where everything you've been running from begins to rise. The moment that makes you realize the only way forward is inward. Something has to change, not outside you, not in other people. Here, in the quiet space you've avoided for years, there comes a moment, quiet, almost invisible, when the noise that once filled your life simply stops, not because the world has gone silent, but because you sit there in the same dim room, the same shadows stretching across the floor, but something inside you loosens. The restlessness that once pushed you toward distraction softens, just enough for you to notice the space beneath it. It feels like the first breath after a long underwater dive, subtle, gentle, and strangely unfamiliar. This is the moment most people miss. The moment when silence is no longer chasing you, it's inviting you. At first, it may feel like stepping into an empty room, but if you stay long enough, if you let your mind settle without grabbing the nearest distraction, you begin to sense a quiet shift. The silence starts to change texture. It no longer feels like a void, but like still water clearing on its own. You watch your thoughts drift across its surface. Ripples, not storms. They rise, asvir, dissolve, and you realize you don't have to chase them. You don't have to fight them. You don't have to believe every one of them. You can simply watch. Suddenly, the mind isn't an enemy. It's a sky, and thoughts are just clouds passing through. You've spent years stirring the water with worry, condésir, fear, expectation, hoping it would somehow clear faster. But clarity never comes by force. Clarity emerges in stillness. And in this stillness, you meet someone you forgot existed, the self beneath the noise. At first, this presence feels subtle, like a faint light behind a closed door. But the longer you sit with it, the brighter it becomes. The inner stranger you once avoided steps forward, not as a threat, but as a familiar face, a face carrying all the pieces of you that you misplaced trying to be someone else. A face holding the truths you buried because they didn't fit the roles you performed. A face that knows who you were before the world told you who to be. And suddenly, you can breathe. The breath stretches deeper than it has in years. Moving through the forgotten corners of your chest, you feel space opening inside you. Wide, archaic, alive. It's as if someone gently lifted a weight you didn't know you were carrying. The weight of pretending, the weight of performing, the weight of abandoning yourself in the hope that someone else might fill the emptiness. In this new spaciousness, something becomes undeniably clear. You were never missing anything. You were only drowning in noise long enough to forget your own depth. Wholeness was never a prize to earn. It was never waiting in the arms of another person. It was simply buried beneath the layers you gathered to survive. As this truth rises, it does not arrive dramatically. It comes the way dawn does. Slow, soft, almost hesitant. But once you see it, you cannot unsee it. You realize that love, the kind you've been searching for, cannot find you until you return to yourself. And the moment you arrive within your own presence, the ache to be completed dissolves. The belief that someone else will fix you dissolves. The hunger for external validation dissolves, because here, in this inner clearing, you feel whole for the first time. It is here that your inner compass awakens, not as a thought, but as a sensation, a subtle tug in the chest that whispers yes or no long before your mind arranges its arguments. This compass has always been with you, but it was drowned out by the noise of wanting to be chosen, accepted, loved, admired. In silence, its needle steadies. It begins pointing you toward the life that actually belongs to you. And with that steadying comes a quiet realization you don't need to chase anything. Not love, not approval, not worthiness. When you stop running from yourself, the world stops running from you. The paradox becomes clear. You become ready for love only when you no longer need it to feel whole. You become open to connection only when connection is no longer your form of escape. You become available for another person only when you are no longer abandoning yourself. This realization doesn't make you cold or detached. It makes you honest. It makes you grounded. It makes you capable of love without clinging, without fear, without turning another human being into a lifeline. You sit there in the quiet room, the same room that once felt suffocating, and something has changed. The silence that once threatened you now holds you. The stillness that once frightened you now reveals you. The emptiness that once felt unbearable now feels like home. You are no longer waiting for someone to complete you. You are no longer searching for the missing piece. You are no longer begging the world to reflect a worth you didn't believe you had. Instead, you begin to feel a calm authority rising, a sense that you can stand inside your own presence without collapsing, that you can breathe without needing someone else to steady you, that you can meet the world not from hunger, but from abundance. This is the shift, the turning inward that becomes the turning point, the moment when silence stops being a threat and becomes a teacher, the moment when you discover that the love you've been chasing out there has been quietly waiting in here, beneath every layer of noise. And now, with this inner spaciousness, awakening, you stand at the threshold of something new, something deeper, something freer, something that no one else can give or take away. A calm settles, a knowing arises, a gentle authority takes root, and the doorway to liberation begins to open. There comes a moment when the fear of solitude simply melts, not with fanfare, but with a quiet recognition that the one presence you had been avoiding was never here to harm you. You feel it like a soft exhale, a subtle unwinding deep inside the chest. The room hasn't changed. The world hasn't changed. But something within you has stopped resisting. And in that pause, you realize you are no longer afraid of yourself. You begin to notice a new kind of quiet rising inside you. Not an emptiness, but a fullness. An inner steadiness that does not depend on anyone else's presence. The silence that once felt sharp now feels like soft dawn light moving gently across your skin. You feel held, not by another person, but by the simplicity of your own breath. In this stillness, you understand that solitude was never punishment. It was preparation for a different kind of existence, one rooted in clarity rather than longing. From this newfound clarity, love begins to transform. It is no longer a lifeline thrown into the emptiness, no longer a remedy for the ache you once carried. Love becomes something lighter, quieter, more spacious. It becomes an offering rather than a plea. You start to see how connection can grow only when two people stand on solid ground, not leaning for balance, but meeting in resonance. This is the shift from hunger to generosity, from reaching outward in fear to opening inward in wholeness. Here, love becomes a gentle extension of your freedom. And as this freedom settles into your bones, you feel a calm authority rising within you. Not dominance, not distance, but sovereignty, the quiet, knowing that you can stand beside another without collapsing into them. You realize you no longer need someone to fill you. You would rather share what is already overflowing inside. This is the paradox. The world rarely teaches you become ready for love, only when love is no longer a means of escape. The heart that once trembled now beats with steadiness. The mind that once scattered now softens into presence. You sit in this awareness as if resting at the shoreline of your own being. The waters within you, once stirred by longing and fear, have grown calm again. You feel the subtle rhythm of your breath rising and falling like waves that no longer reach for anything. There is no urgency here, no grasping, no searching, only the quiet assurance that you are complete enough to meet another without losing yourself. The emptiness that once haunted you has transformed into an inner horizon, broad, open, unshackably. And in this horizon, a new kind of love becomes possible. Not the frantic reaching of a heart afraid to be alone, but the calm meeting of two beings who have already come home to themselves. You no longer enter connection with empty hands. You bring your clarity, your steadiness, your inner compass that no longer trembles at the thought of solitude. Love, once a refuge from yourself, becomes a natural expansion of who you are. It becomes an echo of the peace you've found within. You sense that nothing has been lost, nothing was ever missing. The journey was never about finding someone else. It was about returning to the one who has been waiting for you in every quiet moment. And as you rest in this truth, a gentle anticipation rises, not for someone to arrive, but for the life that unfolds when you no longer run from yourself. Here, in this spacious stillness, you discover the quiet freedom that was yours all along now.